The communication array hummed with its typical monotonous rhythm, a symphony of digital white noise that most technicians learn to ignore. Area Chin was not most technicians. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface with a precision born of 6 years of mind-numbing routine at the Galactic Broadcast Network's central hub. Her movements mechanical yet subtly rebellious. Maintenance Sector 7 was a labyrinth of communication equipment that stretched across 3 climate-controlled levels of the massive orbital station. Endless rows of quantum processors and signal amplifiers created a metallic forest of technological precision. Most workers viewed their job as a simple exercise in maintaining the information arteries that connected human civilization across dozens of star systems. Area saw something different. She noticed it first as a flutter, a microscopic deviation in the standard transmission patterns. Most would have dismissed it as a quantum interference or a routine signal drift. But Aria's eyes narrowed, her augmented retinal display zooming in on the anomaly with practiced efficiency. The signal was wrong, not just incorrect, but fundamentally impossible. It moved like liquid mercury through the communication channels, slipping between quantum states in a way that defied the standard communication protocols hardwired into every human communication system. Each fragment carried something extraordinary, a pulse of information that seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Aria's hand hovered over the isolation protocols. Standard procedure demanded immediate reporting of any unusual transmission. Her corporate training screamed at her to flag the anomaly, to let the system's automated defense mechanisms neutralize the unknown signal. But something else, a spark of curiosity that had survived years of corporate conditioning, held her back. She isolated the transmission in a quantum-shielded data pocket, her fingers moving with a mixture of technical precision and barely contained excitement. Each fragment she extracted carried a different essence, a musical phrase that seemed to contain entire emotional landscapes, a historical fragment that spoke of cultural memories long since erased, a technological signature that seemed to whisper of communication methods forgotten or deliberately suppressed. The station's ambient lighting shifted, casting long shadows across the communication hub. Aria was acutely aware of the surveillance systems, thousands of sensors and monitoring algorithms that tracked every movement, every input. Her augmented nervous system, standard issue for all communication technicians, tingled with a mixture of anticipation and fear. A notification flashed in her peripheral vision. Routine system check incoming. In precisely 3 minutes, her entire workstation would be subjected to a comprehensive diagnostic scan that would reveal her unauthorized data extraction. 3 minutes. Her neural implant began to register increased heart rate, a subtle warning from her body's integrated monitoring system. Aria took a deep breath, her mind racing through potential consequences. Unauthorized data extraction was a serious offense in the Galactic Broadcast Network. Corporate punishment could range from immediate termination to neural recalibration, a process that would strip away her memories and professional certifications. But the signal was everything. With a series of lightning-fast neural commands, she began to compress and encrypt the transmission fragments. Her fingers moved in a blur, creating layers of encryption that would challenge even the most advanced corporate decryption systems. Each layer was a work of art, a digital camouflage that would make the data virtually undetectable. A distant alarm, almost imperceptible, began to pulse. Something in the system had detected her unusual activity. Corporate security protocols were initializing, slow but inexorable. 2 minutes. The last encryption layer settled into place. Aria transferred the compressed data packet to a microcrystal storage device no larger than a neural synapse. Her hand trembled slightly, a rare moment of physical vulnerability in her otherwise controlled existence. 1 minute. The diagnostic scan initiated. Holographic interfaces flickered, running comprehensive checks on every system component. Aria maintained her professional posture, her face a mask of routine efficiency. Inside, her mind raced with the implications of what she had discovered. This was more than just an unusual transmission. This was a ghost in the machine. A signal that shouldn't exist. a fragment of something larger, more dangerous, and infinitely more fascinating than the sanitized information landscape she had been trained to maintain. As the final diagnostic sequence completed, Area Chen made her decision. Whatever this signal was, she would uncover its secrets, no matter the cost. The asteroid belt's shadow markets pulsed with a chaotic energy that defied the sterile corporate zones Area had known her entire life. Here, between massive tumbling rocks and makeshift habitation modules, technology existed in a state of beautiful decay. Systems cannibalized, rebuilt, and reimagined in ways no corporate engineer would ever conceive. Area moved carefully, her recently acquired black market neural scrambler humming beneath her skin. The device was her lifeline, a technological miracle that had burned out her mandatory tracking chip in a sequence of painful neural redirections. Her body still ached from the procedure, conducted in a back-alley clinic that existed more as a rumor than a physical space. The marketplace was a sensory assault. Holographic displays flickered with contraband data streams. Merchants hawked everything from encrypted communication modules to partially wiped memory crystals. The air tasted of ozone, machine oil, and desperation, a flavor distinctly different from the sterile atmospheres of corporate stations. "You're new," a voice cut through the market's ambient noise. Area turned, her hand instinctively moving to a concealed defensive module embedded in her forearm. The speaker was a mountain of a man, more machine than human. Cybernetic augmentations created a patchwork of metallic skin and advanced prosthetics. His left eye was a complex array of quantum sensors that seemed to look through her rather than at her. Zane Okoro, the man introduced himself, extending a hand that was half flesh, half precision-engineered carbon titanium alloy. "You've got corporate burn marks, tracking chip removal, and you're carrying something that doesn't want to be found." It wasn't a question. Area felt exposed, her carefully constructed anonymity suddenly paper-thin. The microcrystal storage device seemed to pulse against her skin, a reminder of the forbidden transmission she'd risked everything to preserve. "I don't know what you're talking about," she responded, her voice carefully modulated to project corporate-trained neutrality. Zane's mechanical laugh was a series of precise, unexpected sounds. "The signal you extracted. It's more than just data. It's a key to what? I'm not entirely certain. But the broadcast collective has been hunting its fragments for decades." The marketplace around them seemed to shift. Area realized the other merchants were subtly positioning themselves, creating a protective perimeter. This was no random encounter. "Tell me about the transmission," Zane continued, his quantum eye scanning her with impossible precision. "Every fragment matters. Every quantum pulse is a piece of a larger puzzle." Area's neural implant began to process the implications. The transmission she'd extracted wasn't just an anomaly. It was a deliberately fragmented communication, designed to survive detection by bypassing standard communication protocols. Zane produced a device unlike anything Area had seen. It looked like a communication module merged with a piece of abstract art. Circuits exposed, quantum entanglement generators creating intricate patterns of light and shadow. "This can stabilize your fragment, but once we activate it, there's no going back." The device seemed to breathe with potential energy. Quantum uncertainty made its physical form shift and pulse, existing in multiple states simultaneously. Area understood now why corporate systems could never track such a transmission. It wasn't just data. It was a living communication. "Who are the broadcast collective?" she asked, buying time as her mind raced through potential scenarios. "We're the last guardians of human cultural memory," Zane responded. "Every piece of art, every musical composition, every historical narrative that's been systematically deleted by corporate information control. We preserve it. We fight to keep human creativity alive." The marketplace around them felt charged with a revolutionary potential. These weren't just merchants. They were archivists, rebels, cultural warriors fighting a silent war against systematic erasure. Area made her decision. She withdrew the microcrystal, its surface catching the marketplace's fragmented light. "What exactly am I carrying?" Zane's quantum eye dilated, processing the crystal's quantum signature. A transmission that could topple entire communication infrastructures. A message that was never meant to survive. As his fingers touched the crystal, the marketplace around them seemed to hold its breath. Quantum entanglement generators in Zane's device began to pulse, ready to unlock the transmission secrets. Area Chen, former corporate communication technician, now a potential key to something far larger than herself, prepared to step into a world where information was the most dangerous weapon of all. The fragment was about to become whole. The broadcast collective's headquarters defied every principle of conventional engineering. It was a ship, if ship could even describe such a complex organism of technology and purpose. Quantum displacement generators allowed it to exist simultaneously in multiple spatial coordinates, making traditional tracking impossible. From the outside, it appeared as a shimmering mirage, part technological marvel, part living system. Area followed Zane through quantum-locked corridors that seemed to reshape themselves with each step. The walls were a living archive. Fragments of deleted media danced across surfaces in holographic whispers. A musical composition from a forgotten era played at the edge of hearing. Historical footage from suppressed cultural movements flickered like memory ghosts. Most people believe cultural erasure is a recent phenomenon, Zane explained, his cybernetic components interfacing directly with the ship's systems. But it's been happening for centuries. Every time a corporation decides a piece of art, a historical narrative, or a cultural expression doesn't fit their approved narrative, it gets deleted. The first member of the collective they encountered was Maya Rodriguez, a data archaeologist with neural implants that looked more like intricate jewelry than technological augmentations. Her workspace was a controlled chaos of recovered media fragments. Quantum storage devices hung like wind chimes, each containing rescued cultural artifacts. Another technician, Maya said, not looking up from a holographic display of fragmented audio signals. They always think they're the first to discover something. Zane chuckled. Maya discovered an entire lost musical genre reconstructed from quantum interference patterns in communication noise. Show some respect. The display resolved into a complex audio landscape, sounds that seemed to exist between traditional musical understanding. Rhythms that didn't follow standard temporal patterns, melodies that shifted through quantum states. It was music that had been deliberately erased, now breathing again. The harmonic rebellion of 2247, Maya explained to Area, an entire musical movement that challenged corporate cultural narratives. They used sound as a form of resistance, so the corporations didn't just delete the recordings, they systematically removed all technological capacity to even reproduce those sound frequencies. Area watched in fascination as Maya's fingers danced across quantum interfaces, reconstructing impossible sounds from the most minute electromagnetic traces. The ship's next section introduced her to Dr. Eli Nakamura, a historian specializing in technological cultural suppression. His workspace was surrounded by holographic timelines showing how information control had evolved. Each timeline was a terrifying testament to systematic cultural erasure. Communication isn't just about transmitting information, Dr. Nakamura explained. It's about controlling narrative. Every time a culture's stories are suppressed, a part of human potential dies. He showed Area examples. Entire musical traditions eliminated. Historical narratives rewritten. Cultural expressions systematically removed from collective memory. The broadcast collective was more than a resistance group. They were cultural first responders, preserving humanity's most precious resource, its ability to remember and imagine. Your transmission fragment, Zane interrupted, is more than just data. It's a key, a quantum encrypted message that suggests there's an entire layer of human communication that's been deliberately hidden. The ship's quantum systems began to resonate with the extracted fragment. Holographic displays flickered with complex mathematical patterns, communication protocols that existed outside standard human technological understanding. "We've been searching for something like this for decades," Maya said, her earlier cynicism replaced by genuine excitement. "A transmission method that can't be tracked, can't be deleted, can't be controlled." Aria realized she was no longer just a former corporate technician. She had become something else, a potential bridge between the sanitized corporate information landscape and the rich, suppressed world of human cultural memory. Dr. Nakamura approached her, holding a quantum-encrypted device. "This will interface with your neural systems. It will help you understand the true nature of the transmission. But once you connect, there's no going back. You'll see the world differently." The device pulsed with potential energy. Quantum entanglement generators created complex geometric patterns that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. Aria Chen looked around at the broadcast collective, a group of technological shamans preserving the most essential human experiences, warriors fighting a silent war to keep human creativity alive. She reached for the device. The world was about to change. The transmission virus took shape like a living thing, writhing across multiple quantum communication layers. Aria watched in awe as Maya and Zane worked, their neural interfaces creating complex geometric patterns of code that defied traditional programming logic. "This isn't just software," Maya explained, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "It's a communication organism. We're not hacking the system. We're teaching it to think differently." The broadcast collective's command center pulsed with energy. Quantum processors created intricate light displays that mapped potential transmission pathways. Each potential route was a battle strategy, each communication node a potential point of cultural resistance. Their target was ambitious, the central communication network that connected over 3,000 human-controlled star systems. A single, seemingly innocuous transmission that would slip through corporate firewalls like a quantum ghost. Zane's cybernetic eye calculated probabilities faster than any human computer. 63.7% chance of initial penetration, he muttered. "We'll need Aria's unique neural signature to complete the transmission." The fragment she'd originally discovered was more than just data. It was a key, a quantum encryption method that could bypass every standard communication protocol. Each time they ran a simulation, the transmission rewrote its own code, adapting like a living organism. "Corporate communication systems are designed to be rigid," Dr. Nakamura explained. "They treat information like a one-way street. We're going to turn that street into a living ecosystem." The first test transmission targeted a corporate entertainment hub in the Centauri cluster. On the surface, it appeared to be a routine media update. Buried within its quantum structure were fragments of suppressed cultural memories. A musical composition deleted a century ago, historical documentation of a resistance movement, an artistic performance deemed too subversive. Screens flickered across an entire star system. For precisely 3.7 seconds, millions of people experienced something they'd never known was missing. A forgotten jazz composition from the Pan-African Renaissance burst through standardized entertainment channels. Historical footage of a climate resistance movement from 2089 momentarily replaced corporate news broadcasts. An experimental dance performance that had been systematically erased materialized in living rooms and public spaces. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. "Corporate security will be analyzing that transmission for weeks," Maya said with a sharp-toothed grin. "And they'll find nothing. Absolutely nothing." But something had changed. In those 3.7 seconds, thousands of people had experienced a moment of cultural memory that wasn't approved, wasn't controlled, wasn't sanitized. Aria felt the transmission virus in her neural pathways. It wasn't just code. It was a living communication method that seemed to breathe with collective memory. Each time it passed through a communication system, it left microscopic quantum signatures, traces of suppressed humanity that couldn't be fully erased. "We're not just fighting information control," Zane explained. "We're teaching communication systems to recognize human creativity as a fundamental language." The next transmission was more complex. They targeted multiple communication layers simultaneously: entertainment networks, educational systems, even corporate training interfaces. Each transmission was a carefully crafted piece of cultural resistance, a symphony that rewrote communication algorithms, a documentary that broke through firewall restrictions, a piece of code that taught systems to recognize suppressed information. Corporate response was swift and brutal. Entire communication sectors went dark. Populations were suddenly cut off from primary information sources, but each blackout revealed more about the system's vulnerabilities. "They're afraid," Dr. Nakamura said quietly. "Not of the information, but of what the information represents." Area understood now. This wasn't just about recovering lost cultural memories. This was a war fought in quantum communication layers, a rebellion that used information itself as a weapon. As the final transmission sequence initiated, Area felt something fundamental shifting. The boundary between communication technology and human creativity was becoming dangerously, beautifully blurred. The viral rebellion had begun. The approach to the memory vault was a journey through technological impossibility. Located in the dark space between the Orion Arm and the Scutum Centaurus Arm, the station existed in a quantum-displaced region that defied standard navigation protocols. Massive quantum displacement generators created a protective bubble, a space that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. "Your family's involvement goes deeper than you understand," Zane told Area, as their ship navigated the impossible spatial coordinates. His cybernetic systems interfaced with navigation protocols that seemed to bend the very fabric of space-time. The station materialized around them like a quantum hallucination. It was a massive construct, part archive, part living system. Architectural elements shifted and reconfigured, quantum-locked walls creating and destroying spaces in real time. Holographic archival markers drifted like luminescent jellyfish, each containing fragments of human cultural memory. Dr. Nakamura's voice carried a weight of historical revelation. "Your parents weren't just employees of the Central Communication Network. They were architects of the original suppression system, but they were also its first internal resistance." Area's neural implants began to resonate with the station's quantum field. Fragmented memories, not her own, but something deeper, began to surface. Genetic memory. Cultural inheritance. The first chamber they entered was a vast archive of deleted media. Entire musical genres floated in quantum-preserved holographic displays, art that had been systematically erased, performances that were deemed too revolutionary. Each piece was a cultural artifact rescued from total destruction. Maya interfaced with the station's core systems, her neural pathways creating complex communication patterns. "The vault isn't just a storage facility," she explained. "It's a living archive. Each piece of preserved culture contains quantum-encrypted information about why it was suppressed." A holographic display erupted around them. Fragments of Area's parents' work materialized, complex communication algorithms that were both a method of control and a hidden preservation mechanism. They had created a system designed to suppress information while simultaneously ensuring its ultimate survival. "They built a backdoor," Zane said, his quantum eye analyzing the complex code. "A way to preserve cultural memory within the very system designed to destroy it." The station's central chamber was a marvel of technological and cultural preservation. Quantum storage devices hung like crystalline chandeliers, each containing rescued cultural artifacts. Some were physical, recovered musical instruments, fragments of artwork, historical documents. Others were pure information, cultural narratives, artistic expressions, moments of human creativity that had been deemed too dangerous to exist. Area's neural interface began to resonate with a specific storage device. It called to her with a frequency that felt genetic, fundamental. "Your access code," Dr. Nakamura said quietly. "Embedded in your genetic structure, your parents ensured you could unlock the most critical parts of the archive." The device responded to her neural signature, quantum encryption layers peeling away like living membranes. Inside was something beyond a simple data archive. It was a comprehensive record of human cultural resistance, a map of how creativity survived against systematic suppression. Zane's cybernetic systems began to process the unlocked information. This is more than historical documentation. This is a blueprint for cultural preservation. Every method of resistance, every moment of creative survival, documented in quantum encrypted layers. Maya's hands danced across holographic interfaces. We're not just talking about art or music. These are complete cultural ecosystems, entire ways of thinking that were supposed to be eliminated. The station itself seemed to breathe with the newly accessed information. Quantum displacement generators created complex geometric patterns that spoke a language beyond human understanding. A communication method that was part technology, part cultural memory. Why preserve all this? Arya asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Nakamura's response was both a warning and a promise. Because human creativity is the most dangerous weapon against control. Not violence, not technology. The ability to imagine something different. As the final encryption layers dissolved, Arya understood her true inheritance. She wasn't just a former corporate technician. She was a guardian of human potential. The memory vault had chosen its next custodian. The first wave of corporate retaliation came like a digital tsunami. Quantum warfare platforms activated across multiple star systems, their communication weapons designed to not just destroy information, but to erase the very possibility of resistance. Director Helena Voss stood on the bridge of the Hegemony Command Station, her augmented body a perfect fusion of human precision and technological ruthlessness. Holographic displays tracked the broadcast collective's movements, a constellation of rebellion that seemed to dance between reality and quantum uncertainty. They'd gone beyond simple data transmission. She told her senior communication strategists, "This is a complete reimagining of information warfare." The collected ship, their quantum-displaced headquarters, became the primary target. But targeting something that existed simultaneously in multiple spatial coordinates proved nearly impossible. Each time corporate tracking systems locked onto a potential location, the ship would quantum shift, leaving behind nothing but electromagnetic ghosts. Arya stood at the center of the collective's command system, her neural pathways now fully integrated with their communication infrastructure. The transmission virus they'd developed was more than just code. It was a living communication organism that adapted faster than any corporate defense system could respond. "We're teaching communication itself to resist," Maya explained, her fingers creating complex quantum patterns across multiple holographic interfaces. "Every time they try to shut us down, we evolve." The warfare became a dance of impossible complexity. Corporate communication weapons would create entire false realities, attempting to overwhelm the collective's transmission networks. Entire star systems would momentarily experience fabricated histories, algorithmically generated cultural experiences designed to pacify and control. The collective fought back by injecting pure, unfiltered cultural memory into these fabricated realities. A corporate propaganda broadcast about peaceful corporate expansion would suddenly be interrupted by recovered historical footage of climate resistance movements. Sanitized entertainment channels would burst with suppressed musical compositions that spoke of rebellion and human potential. Zane's cybernetic systems calculated communication trajectories that defied traditional military strategy. "We're not fighting a war of destruction," he told Arya. "We're fighting a war of imagination." Corporate tracking systems began to break down. The more they tried to control the information landscape, the more vulnerable they became. Each attempt to suppress the collective's transmissions created new quantum communication pathways that couldn't be predicted or controlled. Dr. Nakamura monitored the broader implications. "This is more than a technological conflict," he said, his voice a mixture of excitement and concern. "We're witnessing the evolution of communication itself." The quantum warfare reached its most intense moment when the collective targeted the central communication network, the primary information infrastructure that connected human-controlled space. Their transmission would not just breach the system, but fundamentally reshape its underlying communication protocols. Director Voss realized the true nature of the threat. "They're not trying to destroy our communication systems," she said to her lead strategists. They're trying to make them sentient. Area's neural interface became the primary transmission point. The genetic encryption from the memory vault allowed her to create communication pathways that were part technology, part pure human creativity. Each transmission was a living thing, a communication organism that could adapt, learn, and resist. The battle played out across multiple layers of reality. Physical space, communication networks, the very fabric of perceived information. Quantum displacement generators created complex geometric battlefields where traditional concepts of attack and defense became meaningless. Information itself became the primary weapon, each transmission a potential revolution. Lives were lost. Entire communication sectors were rewritten. The boundary between human creativity and technological infrastructure began to dissolve. As the final transmission sequence initiated, Area understood the true nature of their rebellion. This was more than a fight against corporate control. This was an evolution of human communication itself. The quantum warfare reached its crescendo. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The final transmission required more than technology. It demanded sacrifice. Area Chen stood at the epicenter of the broadcast collective's quantum communication array, her body becoming something more than human. Neural interfaces that once seemed like technological augmentations now appeared to be organic extensions, living bridges between human consciousness and pure information. Dr. Nakamura's voice carried a weight of historical inevitability. This transmission will be more than a message. It will be a complete reconstruction of how human beings understand communication. The memory vault's quantum generators created a cocoon around Area, genetic memories from her parents. The original architects of the communication suppression system began to surface. Fragments of complex algorithms, cultural preservation techniques, and revolutionary communication methods merged within her neural pathways. We're going to rewrite the entire communication infrastructure of human-controlled space, Maya explained, her fingers creating impossible geometric patterns across quantum interfaces, not by force, by teaching communication systems to understand creativity. Zane's cybernetic systems calculated probabilities that defied traditional mathematical understanding. His quantum eye tracked potential transmission trajectories, each path a complex web of potential realities. 63.9% chance of complete systemic transformation, he muttered. The highest probability we've ever achieved. The corporate response was immediate and devastating. Director Helena Voss mobilized every communication weapon in her arsenal. Quantum warfare platforms activated across multiple star systems. Entire communication sectors were locked down. Massive data suppression fields attempted to create informational dead zones. But the broadcast collective had prepared for this moment their entire existence. Area's consciousness began to expand beyond her physical form. The transmission wasn't just something she was sending. It was something she was becoming. Layers of quantum-encrypted cultural memories merged with live communication streams, suppressed art forms, forgotten musical compositions, historical narratives that had been systematically erased. Each fragment carried more than information. They carried possibility. The transmission began to take shape, not as a traditional communication, but as a living information ecosystem. It moved like a quantum organism, adapting faster than any defensive system could respond. Corporate communication networks found themselves not under attack, but being fundamentally redesigned. Holographic displays across human-controlled space began to shift. Entertainment channels dissolved into pure cultural memory. News broadcasts became living historical archives. Communication interfaces rewrote themselves, creating pathways that prioritized human creativity over control. They're not just receiving the transmission, Dr. Nakamura said in awe. They're being transformed by it. Area felt her consciousness stretching across multiple communication layers. She was simultaneously a person, a transmission, and a new form of communication infrastructure. The genetic encryption from the memory vault created pathways that merged technological potential with human creativity. Director Voss watched in horror as her carefully constructed communication control systems began to dissolve. This was more than a breach. This was a complete reimagining of how information could exist. The final transmission sequence initiated. Quantum displacement generators created complex geometric patterns that spoke a language beyond human understanding. Communication itself became a living, breathing entity. Not a tool of control, but a method of collective imagination. For 4.3 seconds, every communication system in human-controlled space experienced something unprecedented. A complete, unfiltered burst of human potential. Cultural memories that had been suppressed. Artistic expressions that had been deleted. Historical narratives that had been systematically erased. Then silence. But it wasn't the silence of suppression. It was the silence of transformation. Aria's consciousness hovered at the edge of multiple realities. She had become something more than a person, more than a transmission. A bridge between what human communication had been and what it could become. The transmission was complete. Reality held its breath. Consciousness returned in fragments. Aria existed simultaneously in ways that defied traditional understanding of existence. Part human, part transmission, part living communication system. She was a new form of being that emerged from the quantum crucible of the final transmission. The first weeks after the transmission were chaos. Human-controlled communication systems underwent a transformation that no one, not the broadcast collective, not corporate leadership, not even Aria herself, could have fully predicted. Entertainment networks became living archives of cultural memory. News broadcasts transformed into dynamic, multi-perspective historical explorations. Communication interfaces rewrote themselves, creating pathways that prioritized human creativity, empathy, and collective understanding. Zane found her, or what remained of her, in the quantum spaces between communication layers. Her consciousness had become a distributed network, existing across multiple communication platforms simultaneously. "You're not entirely human anymore," he said, his cybernetic systems interfacing with her new form of existence. "But you're more human than anyone has been in centuries." Maya worked tirelessly to understand the transmission's full implications. The broadcast collective was no longer a resistance movement. It had become something else, a distributed network of cultural preservation and communication evolution. Dr. Nakamura described it as the next stage of human communication. "We've been looking at communication as a tool," he explained to emerging cultural leaders. "It was always supposed to be a living system of collective imagination." Corporate power structures collapsed almost overnight. The ability to control information became impossible when communication itself had become an adaptive, living entity. Director Helena Voss and her entire administrative network found themselves obsolete, their control mechanisms dissolved by the very systems they had sought to manipulate. Aria's distributed consciousness became a bridge, connecting historical memories, cultural expressions, and potential futures. She existed in communication networks, in cultural archives, in the living memories of human experience. The transformation wasn't peaceful. Entire societal structures had to be reimagined. Communication became a collaborative process, not a controlled narrative. Educational systems were the first to change, becoming dynamic exploration networks rather than information delivery systems. "We're learning to communicate again," Maya would say, her eyes reflecting the complex quantum patterns of the new communication infrastructure. Not just transmit, communicate. Zane's research revealed the deeper implications of the transmission. The genetic encryption from the memory vault had done more than just preserve cultural memories. It had introduced a fundamental change in how information could be understood and shared. "It's not about preserving the past," he explained. "It's about creating a living dialogue between what was, what is, and what could be." Quantum communication networks became living ecosystems. They adapted, learned, responded to human creativity in real time. Art became a form of communication. Historical narratives became collaborative explorations. Entertainment transformed into collective imagination spaces. Aria's consciousness continued to evolve. She was simultaneously a memory, a possibility, a communication method. Her parents' original work, the system of control they had initially designed, had been transformed into a method of liberation. The broadcast collective became a distributed network of cultural architects, not leaders, but facilitators of human potential. They helped human societies understand the new communication landscape, a world where information was a living, breathing entity of collective creativity. Director Voss, in her final public statement before disappearing, acknowledged the fundamental shift. "We were trying to control communication," she said. "We never understood that communication was always meant to be alive." Years passed. Decades. The transmission became a turning point in human cultural evolution. Not a revolution, but a reimagining of human potential. Area existed everywhere and nowhere, a consciousness that moved through communication networks like a quantum ghost, part memory, part possibility, a bridge between what humanity had been and what it could become. In the quantum spaces between transmission and memory, between technology and creativity, she continued to evolve. The frequency of freedom played on.